Okay, this should be recording. Yes. Always takes so long before it tells me. Okay, so this is going to be a short video about 2 acts that you need to know, and that happened between the Stamp Act and the Townsend Duties. So in our topic 3, they're the 2 big revenue acts that you need to know because of the colonial response. But in 1766, when the Stamp Act is repealed, and before 1767, when the Townsend Duties are issued, 2 acts happen. And they're in response to the repeal of the Stamp Act, based on the colonial response. So I'm just going to quickly go over them now. You need to know them. All right, share my screen. Okay, so so the first thing that happens is the Quartering Act, and by now you should know what quartering is. So troops are housed in the colonies by colonials, so British troops. Okay, now what happens is, when the Stamp Act is repealed, one of the reasons Parliament repeals the Stamp Act is because Thomas Gage, who is the commander, so the general of the British troops in the colonies, tells Parliament there's not enough British regulars, so British troops, to control the situation in the colonies if they were to rebel. So Parliament, in response, issues the Quartering Act. So they do this, all right, so that they can send more troops to the colonies in case they need them. So they're basically getting ready to crush a rebellion if it needs to happen, because they're going to issue more acts. All right, so that's what you have to know. It's in response to the situation of the Stamp Act crisis, rebellion. Okay, so the Quartering Act of 1765. The act passed to quarter the British troops left in America after the French Indian War. Now brought up resentments of a standing army. There hadn't been an army before the war. Why does there need to be one now, is what the colonists argued. Remember, you have to know what rights the colonists or the patriots thought were being infringed upon. And this is Locke's second treatise, that a standing army is a prelude to tyranny. Thus, the people have a right to revolt. So 15,000 troops arrived in New York because of the Quartering Act in 1766. The New York Assembly, so the New York legislature, their House of Representatives, refused to comply with the act, and so was suspended between 67 and 69. So Britain is suspending the House legislatures, so the assemblies of the colonies, if they refuse to comply. And this happens in Boston as well during the Townsend Duties, and you have to see my Townsend Duties videos for that.
11 o'clock a.m.
My talking clock. Okay, so what was a colonial response to the Quartering Act? And standing army was considered infringing on rights, like I said, Locke's second treatise. Now, the Quartering Act was especially reviled as it applied not just to rebellious Boston in Massachusetts, but to all of the colonies. Now, leaders in other colonies began to wonder what other punishments Britain may place on them for actions they were not responsible for. So, remember, this is like a simmering pot where the lid is going to blow off at one point. So the colonies are getting more and more discontented, their grievances are growing, and Britain is issuing more and more punitive measures. All right, you can look at them yourself. Then what, after the Quartering Act, what Britain does is they issue the Declaratory Act. And just like it says, declaratory, they declare something. And what do they declare? They declare that Parliament has the right to tax the colonies. So, the Declaratory Act of 1766. The British government was trying to save face after repealing the Stamp Act. So they want to assert Parliament's right to, quote unquote, this is what George says, George III, make laws to bind the colonies and the people of America in all cases whatsoever. So basically, what Britain is doing is they're showing the colonies who's boss. So they're saying, yes, we repealed the Stamp Act. However, we're declaring now that we have the right to tax you whenever we want, and we will. And now we've quartered troops as well, which means if there is going to be a rebellion, we've got the troops to crush them. All right. Now, the same day as the repeal of the Stamp Act, new legislature was passed. Now, Parliament asserted that the said colonies and plantations in America have been, are, and of right ought to be subordinate onto and dependent upon the Imperial Crown and Parliament of Great Britain. So what they're saying with the Declaratory Act is, colonies, beware. All right, we are your boss. Yes, you may have rebelled and you may have been successful with the Stamp Act. However, we're not going to back down. We're going to show you who's boss. And if we want to tax you, we will. That's what they're saying. It's like a warning. All right. So that's it. And what does it lead to? Britain issuing the much hated Townsend duties, which is another video.